The wind arrives before the darkness does. You notice it first as a distant hum, barely perceptible above your own breathing. The sky changes color too gradually for alarm, from cerulean to beige to something sickly and copper. You should have known. The older folks have been watching the horizon with quiet dread for days. Their bones remember what yours doesn't. This is how it begins. Not with thunder, but with stillness. Not with rain, but with its absence, stretched across months, then years. Not with the dramatic collapse of society, but with the slow, inexorable erosion of certainty. You wouldn't last a day. The Dust Bowl doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in through the cracks in your windowsills, underneath your door, through the seams in your clothing. The first real storm comes when the electricity flickers twice, then dies completely. The hum of your refrigerator, that constant companion you never truly appreciated, falls silent. The first hour without power feels like an adventure. The second feels like an inconvenience. By the sixth, you're calculating what food will spoil first. By the 12th, you're eating ice cream for dinner because it's already melting. And something about this feels both childishly delightful and deeply wrong. You don't know it yet, but the power won't return for 30 days. The hunger doesn't feel like hunger at first. It feels like irritability. It feels like your thoughts moving more slowly than they should. It feels like waking up and immediately thinking about what you'll eat today, how you'll portion it, how you'll make it last. You remember reading somewhere that the human body can survive 3 weeks without food. You never thought you'd be counting the days. By the 3rd day, you're portioning crackers. 6 for breakfast, 4 for lunch, 8 for dinner. A feast to look forward to all day. You drink water to fill the emptiness in your stomach, but it only helps for 20 minutes at a time. You find yourself staring at the neighbor's garden, calculating how quickly you could vault the fence, how many tomatoes you could grab before being spotted. You don't do it. Not yet. There's still food in your pantry, even if it's not what you want, even if it's just rice that needs to be cooked on the stove that doesn't work, or canned beans that you've always hated. You eat them cold, straight from the tin. The metallic taste mingles with the grit of dust that's settled on everything, that finds its way into your mouth no matter how carefully you eat. The dust is everywhere now. It forms ghostly drifts in the corners of rooms. It turns the water in your bathtub muddy. It coats your skin and hair, giving everyone the same colorless complexion. You breathe it in with every inhalation. At night, you cough up little clots of mud. On the 5th day, you hear gunshots for the first time. 2 sharp cracks that echo through the neighborhood. You don't know if it's someone hunting for food or protecting what they have. You don't want to find out. You stay inside, away from the windows, drinking lukewarm water and trying not to think about how quiet everything has become. No cars, no planes, no distant music or television sounds bleeding through walls, just the wind, and occasionally a human voice calling out for something or someone. You never hear a response. The hunger becomes a living thing by the end of the 1st week. It's no longer just a sensation. It has a personality, a presence. It wakes you up at night. It follows you from room to room. It whispers to you when you try to read by candlelight to distract yourself. It reminds you of all the food you've wasted over the years, all the leftovers thrown away, all the grocery store abundance you took for granted. You dream of buffets now, of grocery stores with fully stocked shelves. You wake up chewing on your pillowcase. The dust storm that took the electricity also took the clarity of the sky. The sun is just a diffuse glow behind a permanent haze. Without it, your sense of time slips. You mark days by the growing hollowness in your stomach, by how many notches tighter you pull your belt. You never realized how much you ate out of boredom, out of habit, out of the simple availability of food. Now eating is mathematical, it's strategic, it's survival. By the 10th day, you've eaten everything that doesn't require cooking. The rice and dried beans sit in your pantry, useless without heat. You think of the camping stove in your garage, the one you used once for a music festival 3 years ago. You dig it out, only to discover the fuel canister is empty. You never replaced it after that weekend. Why would you? You could always buy more when you needed it. You find yourself looking at your pet differently. The thought disgusts you, horrifies you, and yet it forms unbidden in your mind. You feed your dog half of your own ration instead, and their grateful eyes make you sob with shame for what you briefly considered. The neighbors you never bothered to know well have become mysteries that preoccupy you. Do they have food? Do they have a way to cook? Are they alone? You stand at your window sometimes, watching their houses for signs of life. A candle in a window, a figure passing across a doorway, the womb spring vigilance of someone stepping outside to check their surroundings. You're losing weight now. Your clothes hang differently. Your face in the mirror looks hollow-cheeked, almost elegant in its hunger. There's a strange vanity that flickers through you. Is this how models feel before the reality of your situation crushes it? This isn't a diet. This is starvation in slow motion. Someone breaks into the house, 3 doors down, on the 12th night. You hear the shattering glass, the shouting, a woman's scream cut short. You turn off your candle and huddle in your bathtub, the most interior room in your house, clutching a kitchen knife and listening to the distant sounds of ransacking. You wonder if they found food. You wonder if you should have been the one to break in first. Morning comes, bringing no relief from the dim, dust-choked light that passes for day. You venture outside for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, a bandana tied over your nose and mouth, your eyes narrowed against the stinging particles in the air. The neighbor's house stands with its door ajar, windows broken. No one comes to investigate. No one comes to help. There are no authorities anymore, or if there are, they have bigger concerns than a single break-in. You decide to look for yourself, moving with the hesitant steps of prey in open terrain. The house has been thoroughly looted. In the kitchen, every cabinet door hangs open, every drawer pulled out. There's a dark stain on the linoleum that you don't let yourself examine too closely. In the living room, the furniture has been slashed open, stuffing spilling out like entrails. People were looking for hidden stashes, for secret caches of food or supplies. You find a single packet of crackers that fell behind the refrigerator and pocket it with trembling hands. 5 crackers, 1 more day of not quite dying. On your way back home, you notice that the carefully tended garden in the yard across the street has been devastated. The tomato plants lie broken and trampled. Someone harvested everything, ripe or not. You think of your own yard, the purely ornamental plants you chose for their looks rather than their utility, what you wouldn't give now for even a small vegetable patch. The 15th day brings a new dust storm, more severe than the first. The sky turns from hazy beige to ominous copper to full sepia, like an old photograph coming to life. The wind screams around the corners of your house. Dust forces its way through every crack, every seam, filling your home with a fine layer of grit, despite your best efforts to seal the windows with duct tape and towels. You can't see your hand in front of your face outside. Inside isn't much better. You wrap yourself in sheets like a shroud and sit in your bathtub. listening to the world being scoured away. Your hunger recedes momentarily, replaced by the more immediate fear of being buried alive or suffocating on the dust. The storm lasts for 36 hours. When it finally passes, the silence is as absolute as the darkness had been. You emerge from your bathroom to find your home transformed into an alien landscape. Dust dunes have formed in your living room. Your kitchen counter is buried under an inch of fine soil. When you open the refrigerator door, still reflexively, still hoping against hope, the warm, spoiled contents are now also coated in dust. You use precious water to clean a small space to sleep, to breathe, to exist. You're down to 1 cup of water per day now. The tap stopped working around day 5. All you have is what you filled in containers when you first realized the power might stay off for a while. Not enough. Never enough. The hunger has become a constant companion, so familiar it's almost a comfort. The initial sharp pangs have been replaced by a hollow, empty feeling that never leaves. You move slowly to conserve energy. You sleep 14 hours a day because unconsciousness is preferable to lying awake, thinking about food you can't have. On the 20th day, you find a can of vegetable shortening in the back of a cabinet. You eat a spoonful, gagging on the greasy texture, but grateful for the calories. You save the rest, rationing it by the 1/4 teaspoon. Your body craves protein, but accepts fat as a substitute. You don't think about what this is doing to your organs, your arteries. The future extends only as far as the next meal, the next sip of water. You hear voices outside occasionally, groups moving together for safety, for collective resource hunting. You don't call out to them. You've seen what desperation looks like now. You've become invisible in your own home, a ghost haunting rooms, increasingly resembling a mausoleum. The 23rd day brings rain, actual rain. You stand in your backyard with your mouth open, letting the muddy droplets fall on your tongue. You've set out every container you own, collecting what falls from the sky. The rain mixes with the dust in the air, creating something like thin mud that coats everything, but you don't care. It's water. It's life. The rainstorm clears some of the dust from the air temporarily. For a few hours, you can see the sun again, a weak, watery disk behind thinning clouds. It feels like a miracle, this simplest of natural phenomena that you once took for granted. You sit on your back step and turn your face up to it, eyes closed, feeling the warmth on your skin. The clarity doesn't last. By nightfall, the dust is back, the familiar haze returning like an unwelcome relative who's moved in permanently. But the rain has given you a few more days of water, a few more days of not having to make the choice between dying of thirst or risking exposure by seeking water elsewhere. Your hunger has become philosophical now. You wonder about the famines throughout history, about the people who lived through them or didn't. You think about the Donner Party, about the lengths humans will go to survive. You think about the neighbor's dog that hasn't barked in a week. You think about your own pet, now as gaunt as you are, both of you starving together in a grotesque display of loyalty. You wouldn't last much longer in the Dust Bowl. Not like this. Not alone. The temperature begins to drop on the 25th day. At first, it's a relief from the stifling heat that has filled your house since the air conditioning died with the power. But as night falls, you realize this is not the gentle cooling of evening. This is something else. Something wrong. A cold front has pushed through, dropping temperatures from the scorching 90s to the bone-chilling 40s in a matter of hours. You weren't prepared for this. All your survival calculations were based on heat, on dust, on thirst, not on cold. You gather every blanket in the house, piling them onto your bed. You wear 3 layers of clothing. You close all the doors to create one small space that might hold some warmth, but without heating. The cold seeps in relentlessly, a thief that steals the warmth directly from your bones. Your fingers grow stiff first, then your toes lose feeling. You remember reading about hypothermia once, how it makes you confused, makes you think you're warm when you're freezing to death. You pinch your skin periodically to make sure you can still feel it. The pain is reassuring. It means you're alive. The cold amplifies your hunger. Your body burns calories trying to stay warm, calories you don't have to spare. You eat another 1/4 teaspoon of vegetable shortening, letting it melt on your tongue, trying to imagine it spreading warmth throughout your body. It doesn't work that way, but the fantasy is comforting. You think about starting a fire. You have books, wooden furniture, picture frames, things that would burn. But the risk seems too great. A house fire would kill you as surely as the cold, and more quickly. You opt for the slow death, wrapped in blankets, watching your breath form clouds in your bedroom. The 26th night is the worst. The temperature dips below freezing. Water freezes in the containers you've set out. Your windows frost over from the inside. You can't stop shivering, the violent tremors running through your body in waves. Your teeth chatter so hard you worry they might crack. You think about the pioneers, the settlers who faced winters like this in sod houses, in log cabins with gaps between the timbers. How did they survive? They had wood-burning stoves, you tell yourself. They had stored food, preserves put up during summer abundance. They had communities, neighbors who checked on each other, shared resources. You have none of these things, just a modern house, designed for comfort with electricity, now as cold as a mausoleum. Morning brings no relief. The sun, when it manages to penetrate the dust haze at all, offers no warmth. You force yourself to move, to pace the rooms of your house, to keep your blood flowing. Every step is an effort. Your hunger and thirst have become abstract concepts, distant concerns, compared to the immediate threat of freezing. You find an old bottle of whiskey in a cabinet, forgotten from some holiday party. You take a small sip, feeling it burn down your throat, spread warmth through your chest. It's temporary, illusory warmth. You know alcohol actually makes you lose body heat faster, but the burning sensation is the closest thing to comfort you've felt in days. The 27th day, you make a decision. The house across the street, the one with the looted garden, has a wood-burning fireplace. You've seen the chimney, watched the owners stack firewood beside their garage in autumns past. You need that fireplace now. Need it more than you need your pride, your sense of property rights, your fear of what or who might be waiting inside. You bundle up in every layer you own. Your fingers are so numb, you struggle with the doorknob. Outside, the cold hits you like a physical blow. The dust in the air has frozen into tiny ice particles that sting your face, your eyes. You pull your scarf higher, leaving only a narrow slit for your eyes. The journey across the street feels epic. Your legs are weak from hunger and inactivity. The wind cuts through your layers as if they're made of tissue paper. You stumble once, go down on one knee in the street, and for a moment consider just staying there, letting the cold take you. It would be easier, simpler, but some animal instinct for survival drives you back to your feet, propels you forward to the neighbor's door. It's locked, of course. You use a rock from the garden to break a window, the sound of shattering glass, shockingly loud in the silent neighborhood. You wait, heart pounding, to see if anyone responds to the noise. Nothing. The world remains still, frozen, dead. You climb through the window awkwardly, cutting your hand on a shard of glass. The pain is distant, belonging to someone else. Inside, the house is as cold as outside, but without the wind. It's something, a start. The fireplace dominates the living room, a large stone hearth that looks like it belongs in a ski lodge. Beside it, miracle of miracles, is a rack of firewood, actual split logs, ready to burn. You could weep with relief. It takes you 3 attempts to light the fire. Your hands shake too badly to manage the matches. When the kindling finally catches, you feed it carefully, desperate not to waste this chance. The flames grow slowly, reluctantly, but they grow. Fire, real fire. You sit as close as you can without burning yourself. Hands outstretched, face tilted toward the heat. It feels like resurrection, like your blood is thawing, beginning to flow again, after being suspended in ice. You stay there for hours, adding logs judiciously, watching the precious wood transform into heat and light, and life. The house yields other treasures. The owners were clearly preppers of some sort. In the pantry you find jars of home-canned vegetables, tomatoes, green beans, corn, food that doesn't need cooking. The sight makes you dizzy with relief, with possibility. You open a jar of peaches, the syrup thick and sweet. You eat slowly, knowing your shrunken stomach can't handle much after so long with so little. Each slice is ambrosia, divinity, salvation. You decide to stay, to claim this space as your own. Your own home holds nothing for you now, except memories of normalcy that only make your current reality more painful. Here at least, you have fire, you have food, you have a chance. The next 3 days pass in a haze of cautious hope. You maintain the fire, you eat small portions of the canned goods, you sleep wrapped in blankets pulled from every bed in the house. The cold outside intensifies, but inside you've created a bubble of survivable conditions. You think about the family that lived here, where they went, whether they're alive. You hope they are. You're grateful for what they left behind, intentionally or not. You say a silent thank you each time you eat their food, burn their wood, use their resources. On the 30th day, you hear a noise outside, voices, multiple people moving up the street with purpose. You extinguish the fire immediately, plunging the house into darkness and cold once again. The smoke will have been visible. The warmth in this house will be as obvious to others as it was to you. You hide in an upstairs closet, listening to the footsteps on the porch, the sound of testing the doorknob, the muffled conversation, then the crash of the front door being forced open, heavy boots on hardwood floors, multiple people searching systematically. Someone's been here recently. A voice says, male, authoritative. Ashes are still warm. Food too. Another voice responds. Some of these jars are open. You press yourself deeper into the closet, behind hanging clothes, making yourself as small as possible. Your heart pounds so loudly you're certain they'll hear it. Your breath seems deafening in the confined space. Footsteps on the stairs now, coming closer, doors opening, closing, methodical searching. You close your eyes, as if not seeing them will somehow prevent them from seeing you. The closet door opens. Light from a flashlight sweeps across the space. You hold your breath. The beam passes over you once, twice, then stops directly on your face. Got someone, the man calls out. Upstairs closet. They pull you out roughly. 3 men in hunting gear, armed with rifles and handguns. They look as thin as you, as desperate, but more organized, more prepared. Please, you say, your voice cracking from disuse. I just needed warmth. I'll go. You can have everything here. The oldest of the three studies you for a long moment. How long you been here? Few days you manage. I was dying in my own house. The cold. He nods. They all look like they understand this calculus all too well. You alone? He asks. You nod. Got any skills? Anything useful you can do? You think quickly. What can you offer these men that would make you worth more alive than dead? Worth feeding some of their precious resources? I was a nurse. You lie. Before, I know first aid, medications, wound care. In reality, you worked in an office, but you did take a first aid course once. You know more than nothing. Maybe that's enough. The men exchange glances. A silent communication passes between them. The oldest nods. We've got a place, he says finally. Few families together, pooled resources. We take turns going out, looking for supplies, checking empty houses. We could use someone with medical knowledge. It's not exactly an invitation, but it's not a death sentence either. It's a conditional offer. Usefulness, in exchange for community, for survival. I'll help however I can, you say, meaning it completely. They take you with them, back to a large farmhouse, several miles away. The walk nearly kills you, in your weakened state, but they support you when you stumble. Share water from their canteens. By the time you arrive, night has fallen fully, and the cold has deepened to something that feels primordial, vengeful. The farmhouse glows with warmth, actual warmth, from a wood-burning stove in the central room. There are children here, thin and solemn-eyed, but alive. There are elderly people wrapped in blankets near the stove. There are defenses, boarded windows, reinforced doors, armed lookouts. They feed you a thin stew of unknown ingredients. You don't ask what meat forms the base of it. Some questions are better left unasked in this new world. The warmth of it in your stomach feels like forgiveness, like a second chance. You learn their system. They have a well for water, hand-pumped, since the electricity died. They have stored food, though it's rationed strictly. They have medications scavenged from pharmacies and hospitals in the first days of the blackout. They have a hierarchy, rules, expectations. You're assigned a sleeping space, a thin mattress in a room with 3 other adults. You're given tasks, tending the communal fire, helping prepare meals, assisting the actual nurse. There is one, and you'll have to be careful not to reveal your lack of knowledge. With basic care, it's not comfort, it's not even safety. Not really, but it's better than dying alone in the cold and dark. It's better than the slow starvation you were facing. It's a kind of life, however tenuous. As you lie on your mattress that night, listening to the breathing of strangers who are now your best hope for survival, you realize something. The old world is truly gone. It's not coming back. Not soon. Maybe not ever. This hard-scrabble existence, this desperate clinging to the edges of survival, this is your reality now. You wouldn't have lasted a day in the Dust Bowl on your own. But maybe, just maybe, you can survive it as part of something larger than yourself. The cold continues, seeming to intensify with each passing day. The farmhouse, for all its relative comforts, isn't designed for winter without heating. The wood-burning stove works constantly, but can only heat the main room effectively. At night, you sleep fully clothed, huddled under blankets, your breath forming clouds above your mattress. You learn that the blackout extends far beyond your neighborhood, beyond your city, beyond even your state. No one knows exactly how far it reaches, but rumors suggest much of the country is affected. The cause remains a mystery. Some say solar flares, others sabotage, still others divine punishment. The truth doesn't particularly matter anymore. What matters is enduring. The dust storms continue intermittently. Some days the air clears enough to see the sun properly, to feel its warmth, however faint. Other days, the world outside is a swirling orange-brown nightmare, the air too thick to breathe without covering your face. On those days, no one leaves the farmhouse. You all sit together in the main room, conserving energy, conserving hope. Food becomes an obsession for everyone, not just eating it, but thinking about it, talking about it, remembering it. The children draw pictures of pizza, of ice cream sundaes. The adults reminisce about restaurants, about holiday meals, about the simple pleasure of opening a fully stocked refrigerator. Everyone dreams about food. Some wake crying from visions of banquets they can't touch, can't taste. Your body continues to change. Your clothes hang on you like a child playing dress-up in adult clothing. Your hip bones protrude painfully when you lie on your side. Your ribs are visible, countable. Everyone looks this way now. All sharp angles and hollow spaces, eyes too large and gaunt faces. You stop noticing it after a while. This is just what humans look like in the new world. The cold steals more than warmth. It steals energy, motivation, hope. Simple tasks require monumental effort. Getting up from your mattress in the morning feels like summiting Everest. Carrying water from the well to the house leaves you winded, dizzy. Your thoughts move slowly, trudging through your mind like they're wading through molasses. You begin to understand why bears hibernate. In the cold, with limited food, unconsciousness is the most efficient state. Your body wants to sleep, to shut down all non-essential functions, to slip into a state of suspended animation until conditions improve. Fighting this impulse becomes part of your daily battle. The farmhouse community develops its own rhythms, its own rules. Work is distributed according to ability. Food is shared equally, with extra portions for children and those doing the most physically demanding tasks. Disputes are settled by a council of the eldest members. Serious infractions, theft of food, endangering the group, are punishable by banishment, which everyone understands is a death sentence. You learn which members of the group to trust, which to avoid. The man who found you, Jacob, becomes something like a friend. He was a history teacher before, specializing in the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Ironic, he says, with a grim smile. Spent my career studying this period, and now I'm living it. He tells you about the original Dust Bowl, how it lasted for years, how people survived or didn't. The stories are both terrifying and strangely comforting. Humans have endured this before. Some of them made it through. Maybe you will too. The actual nurse, Eva, discovers your deception within days. You try to help bandage a child's cut hand, and your inexperience is immediately obvious. She confronts you privately, anger clear in her exhausted eyes. You could have gotten someone killed, she hisses, pretending to know things you don't. I needed to be useful, you admit. I was afraid they'd leave me behind if I didn't have skills. She studies you for a long moment, then sighs. I get it. I do. But no more lies. I'll teach you actual first aid. Enough to be helpful, but don't ever pretend to know something medical that you don't. Clear. You nod, grateful for this second chance. Eva becomes your reluctant mentor, teaching you to clean and bandage wounds properly, to recognize signs of infection, to administer the dwindling supply of medications appropriately. You learn quickly, desperate to prove your worth, to secure your place in this fragile community. The 40th day of the blackout brings a new threat. A child develops a fever, then a rash, then another child shows the same symptoms, then an adult. Eva recognizes it before anyone else. Measles, a disease nearly eradicated in the before times, now resurging in a population with weakened immune systems and no access to medical care. The sick are quarantined in a separate room. You volunteer to help care for them, partly from genuine concern and partly from a calculated understanding that surviving the disease will make you more valuable, immune to future outbreaks. It's a risk, but calculated risks are all that's left in this world. The work is grueling. The fever makes the patients delirious, combative. The rash causes pain and itching that drives some to scratch until they bleed. You work in shifts with Eva, cooling foreheads with precious water, administering the few fever reducers available, trying to keep the infected comfortable and the disease contained. The first death comes 3 days into the outbreak. A 4-year-old boy, too weak from months of insufficient nutrition to fight off the virus. His mother's grief is a physical presence in the house, a cloud of anguish that affects everyone, even those who never spoke to her before. You help prepare the small body for burial, wrapping it in a sheet, trying to make him look peaceful. It's the first time you've touched a dead person. You suspect it won't be the last. 2 more die before the outbreak runs its course, an elderly man and a teenage girl. Others recover, weakened but alive. You contract the disease yourself, enduring 5 days of misery before your fever breaks. Eva nurses you through it with the same efficient compassion she shows everyone. When you're well enough to resume your duties, she nods with something like respect. You've paid your dues. You belong now. As much as anyone does. The cold intensifies as what must be winter properly sets in. Without calendars, without regular news, the exact date is a mystery. But the shortened days and bitter nights suggest December, possibly January. The farmhouse group begins to discuss the need for more dramatic measures, burning furniture, books, anything that will create heat. Jacob tells you about the winter of 1887, the school children's blizzard that swept across the Great Plains without warning. Children who had gone to school on a relatively mild morning found themselves trapped by a sudden, catastrophic storm. Many died trying to make their way home, becoming lost in the whiteout conditions mere feet from safety. People back then knew how to prepare for winter, he says, his voice low to avoid disturbing others trying to sleep nearby. They stored food all summer and fall. They had proper wood-burning stoves, not decorative fireplaces. They had knowledge we've lost. You think about your own pre-blackout life, how utterly unprepared you were for even temporary discomfort, let alone catastrophe. How dependent on systems you never thought about, electricity, supply chains, telecommunications. How little you knew about survival. I wouldn't have lasted a day on my own. You admit, not in this. Jacob nods. Few of us would. That's why finding each other was so important. Humans aren't meant to survive alone. The 50th day brings a small miracle. A military convoy passes near the farmhouse, actual functioning vehicles carrying soldiers in uniform. They stop when flagged down, distribute some supplies, military rations, blankets, basic medications. They can't or won't take civilians with them, but they promise more aid is coming, that the government is slowly re-establishing control, slowly restoring power in some areas. For the first time in weeks, there's a sense that this might not be forever, that there might be an after to this experience. The hope is almost painful in its intensity, more dangerous in some ways than despair. Hope can break you when it's snatched away again. The soldiers warn that it will be weeks, possibly months, before power is restored to this area, that the focus is on critical infrastructure. First, hospitals, water treatment facilities, government centers. The civilians need to continue to shelter in place, to conserve resources, to help each other. After they leave, the farmhouse community holds a meeting to discuss the news. Some want to try to reach the areas where power has been restored. Others argue that the journey would be too dangerous, that the community should stay together, continue as they have been. The debate grows heated, fractures forming in what had seemed like solidarity. In the end, the group splinters. About a third choose to leave, to take their chances on the road, seeking the rumored recovery. The rest, including you, opt to stay. Better the devils you know, the systems you've established, than the unknown dangers of travel in winter with limited resources. You watch them go with a mixture of envy and foreboding. Maybe they'll find salvation. Maybe they're walking to their deaths. You'll likely never know. The cold seems to reach its peak in the days following the split. The temperature drops to what must be well below zero. The well freezes, requiring hours of work with heating elements to access water. Everyone sleeps in the main room now, as close to the stove as safely possible, bodies pressed together for warmth, like a litter of puppies. You wake one morning to find an elderly woman has died in the night, her heart simply stopping in the extreme cold. Her body is frozen solid. By the time anyone realizes, it can't be buried in the rock-hard ground, so it's placed in an outbuilding, covered with blankets, out of respect, left to wait for spring, or for the animals, whichever comes first. The cold steals more than lives. It steals dignity, compassion, humanity. Survival becomes increasingly mechanical, increasingly primal. You eat when food is available, sleep when exhaustion overtakes you, work when work needs doing. Everything else, emotion, connection, thought becomes luxury, superfluous to the basic equation of staying alive one more day, one more night. You find yourself staring at your hands sometimes, not recognizing them as your own. Chapped, cracked, dirty, thin, the hands of someone you never expected to become. You wonder if your mind has changed as much as your body, if the person you were before the blackout would recognize the person you are now. Probably not. The cold continues, implacable, patient, knowing it can wait you out. The 60th day of the blackout brings a new horror. The food stores, carefully rationed as they've been, are running dangerously low. The hunting parties return with less and less game. The animals are either dying from the cold or have migrated away from the dust-choked region. The remaining canned goods are counted and recounted, the numbers never changing, never increasing. Jacob calls a meeting. His face is grave as he lays out the situation plainly. At current consumption rates, the food will last another 2 weeks, maybe 3, if portions are cut again. After that, no one finishes the thought. No one needs to. Options are discussed. More aggressive hunting and foraging parties, traveling farther afield, trying to reach neighboring communities to trade, though no one knows if such communities exist anymore. Sending a small group to follow the military convoy's route, hoping to find aid. All are desperate measures. All carry significant risks. All might fail. In the end, the decision is to try all 3 simultaneously, different groups assigned to different tasks, maximizing the chances that at least one will succeed. You volunteer for the trading mission, partly because it seems marginally less dangerous than the others, and partly because you've developed a kind of friendship with Eva, who's also chosen this option. Your group consists of 6 people: you, Eva, an ex-military man named Ramirez, a former park ranger called Webb, and a married couple, the Chengs, who were engineers before the blackout. You take what few items might have trade value, some tools, some medications that aren't immediately needed, a few pieces of jewelry people have held on to as remembrances of the before times. You set out at dawn, when the light is best for traveling, and the cold is marginally less life-threatening. Each of you carries a pack with minimal supplies, a little food, water, extra clothing layers, matches, a weapon, if you have one. The goal is to reach the next town over, about 15 miles away, and return within 3 days. The world outside the farmhouse is a wasteland. The dust has coated everything in a uniform gray-brown, erasing distinctions between road and field, lawn and forest. Nothing moves except the occasional bird, black against the colorless sky. No other humans are visible. No houses show signs of habitation. The silence is absolute, broken only by the sound of your own breathing, your own footsteps. You walk all day, covering about 10 miles before the early winter darkness forces you to stop. Finding shelter becomes the priority. After some searching, you locate an abandoned gas station with its windows and doors intact. It's not warm, but it blocks the wind, and the structure will retain whatever heat your bodies generate. Inside, the gas station has been picked clean of anything useful. The shelves that once held snacks and drinks are empty. The cooler's dark and open, but it's dry and solid, and out of the relentless wind, you make a small, carefully controlled fire in a metal trash can, just enough to warm some water for drinking and to take the deadly edge off the cold. No one sleeps well. You take turns keeping watch, though it's unclear what exactly you're watching for. Other desperate humans perhaps, or animals, or just the comfort of knowing someone is conscious, vigilant, ready to raise the alarm if conditions worsen. Morning comes gray and grudging. You eat a meager breakfast, a few crackers each, a sip of water. Your breath still forms clouds inside the gas station. Everyone's movements are slow, conservation of energy now instinctual. You pack up silently and continue your journey. The town, when you reach it around midday, shows more signs of life than you expected. Smoke rises from a few chimneys. A barricade has been constructed across the main street, manned by people with rifles. They spot your group before you can decide whether to approach or skirt around. That's far enough. A voice calls, "State your business." Ramirez steps forward, hands raised, non-threateningly. "We're from the farmhouse community, about 15 miles west, looking to trade for food, if you have any to spare." A long pause follows. The armed figures confer among themselves, occasionally glancing at your bedraggled group. Finally, one gestures you forward. "Approach slowly, one at a time. We'll search you before you enter." You exchange nervous glances. Being searched means being separated, being vulnerable. But what choice do you have? Starvation waits at the farmhouse. At least here, there's a chance, however slim, of finding food. Ramirez goes first, then Webb, then the Chengs. You and Eva are last, subjected to rough but efficient pat-downs by grim-faced men and women who look as hungry as you feel. They take your weapons temporarily, a knife from your boot, Eva's small handgun with promises of return when you leave. Inside the barricade, the town has been transformed. What must have once been a typical small main street is now a fortified compound. Buildings have been connected with makeshift walkways. Windows are boarded or covered with heavy fabric to retain heat. People move purposefully between structures, carrying supplies, weapons, tools. Children are visible but silent, watching newcomers with wary, adult eyes. You're led to what was once a diner, now serving as some kind of community hall. A middle-aged woman with a shotgun slung across her back appears to be in charge. "I'm Martinez," she says without preamble. "I speak for this community. What do you have to trade?" Your group displays your meager offerings. The tools attract some interest, as do the medications. The jewelry receives only contemptuous glances. Gold and diamonds have no value in a world where warmth and calories are the only currencies that matter. "We need food," Eva explains. "Our supplies are running critically low. We have about 30 people at our location, including children and elderly." Martinez studies your group carefully. "Food is scarce everywhere. We've established a greenhouse using salvaged materials from the garden center. We're growing what we can, but it's hardly enough even for our own needs." Your heart sinks. You've come all this way for nothing. But then Martinez continues, "However, we might be able to spare some seed potatoes and a few jars of preserved vegetables in exchange for the medications and," she pauses considering, "and information. Any news about government response, other communities, passable roads? It's a better offer than you expected. Seeds mean potential future food. Preserved vegetables mean surviving until those seeds can grow. You share what little you know about the military convoy, about conditions to the west." Martinez listens intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When you've exhausted your knowledge, she nods and issues instructions to her people. A small crate is assembled, containing the promised items: 6 jars of home-canned vegetables, a bag of seed potatoes, and unexpectedly, a few packages of dried herbs and salt. "The salt is extra," Martinez says, noting your surprise. "We raided a restaurant supply store before others thought of it. Preserving will be important come spring, if any of us make it that long." The implication is clear. She's not certain of survival either, despite the relative organization of her community. No one is. You spend the night in the town, housed in what was once a dentist's office, now stripped of anything useful except the waiting room chairs. Martinez's people provide a small meal, a thin stew of unidentifiable ingredients, but hot and filling compared to what you've been eating. It feels like a feast. Ramirez and Webb spend the evening gathering information about other nearby communities, potential sources of food, routes that might be safer for travel. The picture that emerges is bleak. Most neighboring towns are abandoned or have devolved into dangerous territories controlled by armed groups who take what they want by force. Food shortages are universal. The cold has killed as many as disease or violence. "We should leave at first light," Ramirez advises when you convene in your temporary shelter. "Get back to our people with what we've found. It's not much, but it's something." No one disagrees. The seed potatoes are a slim hope. They'll need to be planted soon, will need tending, will take months to yield food. The preserved vegetables might stretch your existing supplies by a week, maybe 2. It's not enough, and everyone knows it. The unspoken question hangs in the frigid air. What happens when even this runs out? Morning comes with a fresh dust storm, limiting visibility to a few yards. Martinez advises waiting it out, but your group feels the urgent pressure of those waiting back at the farmhouse. You set out despite the conditions, your precious cargo distributed among your packs, your weapons returned as promised. The journey back is arduous, the dust forcing you to wrap faces in fabric, to link arms to avoid losing each other in the murk. Progress is painfully slow. What took 1 day on the outward journey threatens to take 2 or more for the return. By nightfall, you've covered less than 5 miles. Finding shelter is harder this time. The dust obscures landmarks, makes exploration dangerous. You finally settle for an overturned truck trailer, creating a cramped but serviceable windbreak. No one suggests a fire. The dust would choke it immediately, and the light might attract unwanted attention. You huddle together for warmth, taking small sips of water to wet throats raw from breathing dust all day. No one speaks much. What is there to say? The mission has yielded something, but not enough, not nearly enough. The second day of travel brings clearing skies but intensifying cold. Your feet go numb, despite multiple layers of socks. Your face burns from exposure and dust abrasion. Every step becomes an exercise in will. Just one more, just one more. After that, Webb spots them first, figures moving parallel to your group, partially concealed by the rolling terrain. 3, maybe 4 people, keeping pace with you, maintaining distance, but definitely following. Don't react obviously, he murmurs, but we've got company. 3 o'clock, about 200 yards out. Everyone fights the instinct to turn and look. Ramirez casually adjusts his pack, using the movement to scan the area Webb indicated. Terry account 4. He confirms quietly. Armed, from what I can see. They're tracking us. Bandits, Mrs. Cheng asks, fear evident in her voice, despite her attempt to control it. Or just desperate people like us, Eva suggests, though her hand drifts to where her gun would be if you hadn't all agreed to pack the weapons away to avoid tempting Martinez's group. Either way, they want what we're carrying. You say, the seed potatoes, the preserved food, maybe even the salt, which has become as precious as gold. Options? Webb asks Ramirez, deferring to his military experience. Ramirez considers for a moment. We can't outrun them. We're too tired, too cold. We could try to hide, but there's not much cover in this terrain. We could stand and fight, but they have the advantage of position and probably strength. Or we could try to talk to them. You suggest, offer a share of what we have in exchange for safe passage. The idea receives mixed reactions. Sharing means less food for your own community. Fighting means risking everything. Hiding seems impossible in the open landscape. We talk. Demers decides finally, but we prepare for worse. Get your weapons accessible, but not visible. Cheng's in the center with the food packs. Webb, Eva, and I will do the talking. You. He nods at you. Stay alert, and watch our backs. They might have friends circling around. You do as instructed. Heart pounding with a fear that has nothing to do with cold. Your knife feels inadequate against what might be coming, but it's better than nothing. Ramirez stops walking and turns directly toward the shadowing group. He raises his hands shoulder high, palms forward, and calls out, "We see you there. We're just passing through, heading home. No need for trouble." A long pause follows, then the figures move closer, no longer attempting concealment. 4 men, as predicted, all bearing weapons, 2 with rifles, 1 with a shotgun, 1 with what looks like a machete. They're as thin as your group, as dirty, their eyes showing the same desperate calculation you've seen in every survivor's face. "What are you carrying?" The oldest calls back, his rifle not quite pointed at your group, but not quite pointed away either. "Personal supplies," Ramirez answers steadily. "Food for our families." Food. The man says the word, with reverence, with hunger. "We haven't eaten in 3 days. You believe him. His gaunt face and trembling hands speak of starvation beyond even what your group has experienced. The men with him look even worse. One sways on his feet as if standing requires all his remaining strength. "We can spare a little," Eva says suddenly, stepping forward despite Ramirez's warning hand. "Not much. We have people depending on us too." but enough so you don't have to make a choice you'll regret. The men exchange glances, a silent communication passing between them. The oldest lowers his rifle slightly. "How do we do this?" he asks. "We'll set some food on the ground and back away," Eva says. "You take it, and let us continue on our way. No one gets hurt." After some negotiation, a small portion of your supplies is sacrificed. 1 jar of vegetables, a handful of seed potatoes. It's painful to part with even this much, knowing what awaits at the farmhouse. But the alternative might be losing everything, or worse. The exchange goes smoothly. The men take the offered food with hands that shake from more than cold. The oldest meets Ramirez's eyes, briefly. "Thank you," he says simply. "We won't forget this." Whether it's a promise or a threat remains unclear as they back away, disappearing into the rolling landscape as quietly as they appeared. Your group continues, more vigilant now, more aware of vulnerability. No one says it, but everyone thinks it. Those men were us, just with worse luck. We could be them tomorrow. You reach the farmhouse as dusk is falling on the 3rd day. Your return is greeted with relief that quickly turns to muted disappointment when the meager results of your mission are revealed. Jacob thanks you all sincerely, but the worry in his eyes says what his words don't. It's not enough. That night, as the community gathers for the evening meal, now reduced to little more than hot water flavored with the last of the bouillon cubes, and whatever edible plants Webb managed to identify on your journey, Jacob announces a new policy. "Starting tomorrow, hunting parties will operate differently," he says, his voice steady despite the weight of what he's saying. "Any large game brought in will be shared community-wide. Smaller game, squirrels, rabbits, birds, can be kept by the hunting party responsible. Everyone understands the implications. Communal sharing, the foundation of your survival so far, is being partially abandoned. It's a desperate move, designed to incentivize hunting by allowing those who succeed to feed themselves better than the rest. It's the beginning of the end of your community, as you've known it. The next week brings the changes you feared. People become more secretive, more protective of what little they have. Smaller groups form within the larger community, alliances based on family ties, pre-blackout friendships, or simply calculated assessments of who might be useful for survival. You stick with Eva, who has become your closest ally. Together with Ramirez and Webb, returned from your trading mission with a new bond forged through shared danger, you form one such group. The 4 of you pool resources, take turns on hunting expeditions, watch each other's backs. The hunting yields little. The winter has driven most animals into hibernation or migration. Those that remain are wary, thin, hardly worth the calories expended in pursuing them. Some days the hunting parties return empty-handed, some don't return at all. One such party, gone for 3 days, comes back with a deer, an actual deer, the first large game seen in weeks. The community reacts with both joy and suspicion. Where did they find it? How did they kill it with the limited weapons available? Why were they gone so long? The questions go unasked publicly, but circulate in whispers. The meat is distributed according to Jacob's new policy, but the portions are so small as to seem almost symbolic. Still, it's protein, it's sustenance. It's something. 2 days later, another hunting party returns with meat, not venison this time, they claim, but wild boar. It looks strange, tastes stranger. No one asks detailed questions. No one wants to know. Your own group goes hunting less often, focusing instead on setting snares for rabbits and fishing through holes cut in the ice of a nearby stream. The results are modest but steady. A rabbit every few days, the occasional fish, enough to supplement but not replace the dwindling communal stores. The 70th day of the blackout brings the first true breakdown of order. A young man is caught stealing from the communal food supply in the middle of the night. He's brought before Jacob and the informal council that has developed to handle disputes. The young man doesn't deny his actions. "My sister is sick," he says simply. "She needs food to recover. The portions we're getting aren't enough." It's true. His sister has been battling what Eva thinks is pneumonia, her body weakened by months of insufficient nutrition. She needs more calories than others to have any chance of recovery. "We're all hungry," an older council member says harshly. "We all have needs. The rules exist for a reason." Jacob looks pained. "If we make exceptions, the whole system collapses. If everyone took what they thought they needed, there would be nothing left for anyone." The debate continues for hours. In the end, the young man is banished, not permanently, but for a week. In the depths of winter, with limited supplies, it amounts to a potential death sentence. His sister wails when she hears the verdict. No one meets her eyes. You watch the young man leave, a single pack on his back containing his allotted share of food for the week, hardly enough for 2 days. If carefully rationed, he doesn't look back. That night, you can't sleep. The young man's face haunts you, the desperation in his eyes, the certainty that his sister would die without additional food. The choice he made, knowing the consequences. You think of Martinez's town, how they've organized differently, how they've found ways to grow food, even in winter. You think of the seed potatoes, now carefully stored for spring planting, that seems impossibly far away. You think about choices, about survival, about what you're becoming in this new world. Morning brings news that must have been inevitable, but still comes as a shock. Another community member has gone missing, an older woman, quiet and increasingly frail, who hadn't been seen since the previous evening. A search party finds no trace of her. 2 days later, a hunting party returns with meat again. No one says it. No one needs to. The knowledge sits heavily in every stomach that consumes the meal, in every mind that chose not to question too deeply where the meat came from. The choice has been made by someone, or several someones. The line has been crossed. You meet with Eva, Ramirez, and Webb in secret that night, huddled in the cold barn for privacy. "We need to leave," Eva says, without preamble. "This place is changing. The people are changing." No one disagrees. "Where would we go?" Webb asks, practically. "Winter isn't over. The roads are still dangerous. We have no guarantee of finding better elsewhere." "Martinez town, you suggest. They've established a greenhouse. They seem more organized, more humane." "You mean?" Eva says quietly. Ramirez nods slowly. "It's a risk, but staying might be a bigger one. The decision is made. You'll leave in 2 days, taking only what belongs to your small group, nothing from the communal supplies. You'll tell Jacob of your plans the night before. You owe him that much for the weeks of shelter, for the system that worked until it didn't." Jacob receives the news with resignation rather than surprise. "I was wondering who would be first to go," he says, looking older than his years in the flickering light of the single candle permitted in each room. "Ever since the banishment, ever since—" He doesn't complete the thought. "You could come with us," you offer impulsively. "You and anyone who wants to maintain certain standards." He shakes his head. "My place is here. Someone needs to try to hold what's left together, to remember what we're supposed to be, even if we're failing at it right now." You respect his decision, even as you mourn it. Jacob has been the moral center of the community, the one who insisted on fair distribution, on caring for the weakest, on maintaining as much humanity as possible in inhuman conditions. Without him, you fear what this place will become, but you can't stay. Not after what you know, or suspect you know. Not with the quiet complicity that has settled over the farmhouse like the dust outside, coating everything, getting into every crevice, impossible to fully remove. Your small group departs at dawn, each carrying a pack with your personal belongings and your share of the food you've hunted or fished yourselves. A few others have decided to join you, the Chengs from the trading mission, a young couple with an infant, the girl whose brother was banished. Her brother never returned, and her pneumonia has improved enough for careful travel. Jacob sees you off, his face unreadable in the grey morning light. If you find something better, he says quietly, come back for others. For those who can still be saved, to promise, knowing it may be a promise, impossible to keep. The journey to Martinez's town is harder than before. The weather has deteriorated further, with snow now mixing with the ever-present dust, creating a sludge that clings to your boots, weighing down every step. The young couple struggles with their infant, who cries almost constantly from cold and hunger. The sick girl weakens visibly with each mile. You stop more frequently than planned, seeking shelter in abandoned structures, making small fires when possible. Progress is painfully slow. On the third day, you encounter another group heading in the opposite direction. Strangers, thin and hollow-eyed like everyone else, but organized, moving with purpose. They carry weapons openly, but don't immediately threaten your party. Their leader, a woman with a military bearing, stops a cautious distance away. Where are you headed? She calls. The town east of here, Ramirez answers. We've traded with them before. The woman's expression darkens. Turn around. The town is gone. Gone. Eva steps forward. What do you mean gone? Overrun 3 days ago. Armed group came through, at least 30 strong. They took everything, food, weapons, tools, killed anyone who resisted, burned the greenhouse. The news hits like a physical blow. Your destination, your hope, destroyed. With some of the survivors, the woman continues. We're heading west. Heard there might be a community out that way. She nods in the direction you've come from. The farmhouse, you confirm. We're out 2 days' journey, in good conditions, probably 3 or 4 in this weather. They're surviving, but resources are very limited. The woman nods grimly. The limited resources are better than none, which is what we've got now. You exchange what information you can. The situation at the farmhouse, edited carefully to exclude your darkest suspicions, the condition of the roads, the location of possible shelter along the way. In return, they tell you what they know of conditions to the east, more abandoned towns, a few isolated homesteads still occupied, rumors of a military checkpoint about 100 miles away where aid might be found. What will you do now? The woman asks, as your groups prepare to continue in opposite directions. It's the question that's been forming in everyone's mind since her devastating news. What now? Where do you go when your only destination has been destroyed? East, Ramirez says, after consulting silently with your group, away from what's happening at the farmhouse. Maybe try to find one of those homesteads, or keep going toward that checkpoint. The woman studies your group, the weak, the young, the infant. Her expression says what her words don't. She doesn't think you'll make it, but she nods. Good luck, she says simply. You too, you reply, knowing the farmhouse they're heading toward may not be the salvation they hope for. Your groups part ways, each carrying a weight heavier than your packs, the knowledge that there may be no safe haven, that survival has become not just difficult, but perhaps impossible, that choices unthinkable in the before times have become everyday calculations in this new reality. That night, sheltering in an abandoned barn, your group holds a council of its own. The situation has changed. The journey east now has no clear endpoint, no guarantee of improvement. The infant is showing signs of dehydration. Despite the parents' best efforts, the sick girl's cough has worsened, her breathing becoming labored again. We could go back, Mr. Cheng suggests hesitantly, to the farmhouse. We know there's shelter there at least. Food, however it's obtained. The silence that follows is heavy with unspoken knowledge. I can't go back, Eva says finally. Not to that. I'd rather take my chances out here. Others nod in agreement. Whatever is happening at the farmhouse, whatever lines are being crossed, it represents a moral threshold many of you cannot or will not step over, despite the physical safety it might offer. We continue east then, Ramirez decides. One day at a time, we look for a place to shelter longer term, somewhere defensible, with access to water, with possibilities for food that don't involve. He trails off, becoming monsters. Webb finishes quietly. The next morning, the infant won't wake up. The parent's grief is a terrible thing to witness. Primal, raw, beyond consolation. You help them bury their child in the frozen ground outside the barn, the small body wrapped in a blanket, the grave marked with a crude cross fashioned from broken fence boards. No one speaks of turning back after that. The parents' determination to move forward, away from the place that represents their greatest loss, settles the question for everyone. East it is, into uncertainty, into continued hardship, but at least with the ability to look at your reflection and recognize the person looking back. The choices you make now define you, not comfort, not ease, not even guaranteed survival, but humanity. Retaining what makes survival worthwhile, you continue, one painful step at a time, into a future none of you can predict. The journey east has no destination, only the vague hope of something better than what you've left behind. Days blend into one another, marked by the same routines. Wake, eat sparingly, walk until exhaustion or darkness forces a stop. Find shelter, sleep fitfully. Repeat. The sick girl, Maya, dies on the 4th day of travel. Her lungs, weakened by pneumonia and the constant dust, simply stop working during the night. You wake to her brother's keening, a sound of loss so ancient and fundamental it seems to come from the earth itself rather than a human throat. You bury her as you buried the infant, in frozen ground that resists the makeshift tools you fashioned from branches and debris. The digging takes hours, everyone taking turns, fingers bloody and raw from the effort. No one suggests leaving her unburied. Some rituals must be maintained if humanity is to be preserved. Her brother Daniel becomes silent after the burial. He walks with the group, but doesn't speak, doesn't make eye contact, moves like an automaton. You take turns staying near him, making sure he eats what little food is available, guiding him when the path becomes unclear. His grief is a tangible presence, a weight everyone helps to carry. The weather worsens as you push east. The snow becomes more frequent, the dust storms more intense. Finding shelter each night grows more difficult as you move into less populated areas. The abandoned structures you do find have often been picked clean of anything useful. Your food supplies dwindle alarmingly. The hunting and fishing that sustained you near the farmhouse proves more challenging in unfamiliar territory with decreasing strength. Some days, you subsist on nothing but melted snow and the few edible plants Webb can identify under the winter-killed vegetation. Hunger becomes a constant companion, more intimate than any human relationship. It whispers to you at night, distracts you during the day, colors every thought and decision. You dream of food in vivid detail, not just meals from the before times, but things you would have found unappetizing or even repulsive then. Raw organs, bone marrow, blood. You wake from these dreams sweating despite the cold, ashamed yet understanding that your body is simply demanding what it needs to survive. The line between necessity and monstrosity blurs a little more each day. On the 10th day of your eastward journey, Webb spots the homestead. It's nestled in a small valley, partially protected from the winds that have made your travels so difficult. From your vantage point, on a ridge, you can see a main house, a barn, several outbuildings, and something that makes your heart leap. A greenhouse, its plastic coverings still mostly intact. Could be occupied, Ramirez cautions, studying the property through a small pair of binoculars he's carried since the beginning. I don't see movement, but that doesn't mean it's abandoned. Occupied might be better than abandoned. Eva points out, if they're willing to share space, more people means more resources, more protection, or more competition for limited supplies. Mr. Cheng counters. The debate continues briefly, but the reality of your situation makes the decision inevitable. You need shelter, you need food. The homestead represents the best chance for both that you've seen in days. You approach cautiously, Ramirez and Webb taking point, the rest of you hanging back with what weapons you have ready. The silence as you near the buildings is either reassuring or ominous, depending on how you interpret it. The main house shows no signs of recent habitation. The door stands partially open, snow drifted across the threshold. Inside, furniture remains in place, but is coated with the same dust that covers everything in this region. The kitchen cupboards have been emptied, either by the original occupants before they left, or by others who passed through after. The barn tells a similar story. Abandoned, but not in haste. The stalls are empty, the hayloft bare. Tools still hang on the walls, suggesting whoever left expected to return, or at least left in an orderly fashion rather than fleeing. The greenhouse is your greatest hope and your greatest disappointment. The structure is indeed largely intact, but the plants inside are dead, killed by cold when the heating system stopped working. Without electricity, what might have been a thriving winter garden is now a graveyard of withered tomato vines and frost-blackened greens. Nevertheless, the homestead represents a far better situation than continuing to travel. The buildings are sound. The main house has a wood-burning stove for heat and cooking. The well, while frozen at the surface, might be made functional with effort. The greenhouse, once repaired and replanted, could provide food in the future, if any of you live long enough to see seeds grow to maturity. Till we stay, Ramirez decides, and no one disagrees, at least until conditions improve, or we find something better. The work of establishing yourselves in the homestead gives purpose to days that had been defined only by walking and surviving. Tasks are divided according to ability and strength. Eva and the infant's mother, Sarah, focus on making the main house habitable, sealing drafts, organizing sleeping spaces. Ramirez, Webb, and Mr. Cheng secure the perimeter, taking inventory of tools and potential weapons, assessing what might be salvaged from the outbuildings. You and Mrs. Chenchin take stock of what food remains in your packs, establishing a strict rationing system that might stretch supplies for another week if you're lucky. Daniel helps with whatever tasks he's given, moving mechanically, speaking only when directly addressed. His grief remains a palpable presence, but the physical labor seems to provide some small relief, or at least distraction. The infant's father, Mark, disappears for hours the first day, returning with a rabbit, small and scrawny, but actual meat. He says nothing about how he caught it, without traps or guns, and no one asks. The rabbit is skinned, cleaned, and added to a stew of melted snow, and the last of the vegetables from your packs. It's the first hot meal any of you have had in days. That night, gathered around the wood-burning stove that provides the only heat in the otherwise freezing house, there's a fragile sense of improvement. You have shelter, you have a food source, however tenuous, you have each other. The moment of hope is shattered just before dawn. You wake to the sound of splintering wood, shouting, a gunshot. Ramirez, who was on watch, yells for everyone to get down, to find cover. You scramble from your blankets, pulling Sarah behind a heavy oak table that you and Webb overturn for protection. Others scatter to various corners of the room, grabbing whatever makeshift weapons are at hand. Figures burst through the door. 3 men, armed with hunting rifles. They're as thin as your group, as desperate-looking, but their expressions hold something your group has avoided, the predatory calculation of those who've decided other humans are simply another resource to be harvested. Well now, the tallest says, his rifle moving from one huddled form to another. Looks like someone's made themselves at home in our little refuge. Your refuge? Ramirez challenges from his position near the wood stove, a heavy iron poker in his hand. Place was abandoned when we arrived yesterday. We've been hunting, the man says, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. We gotta range further and further these days to find game, but we always come back. This is our place, and now you're in it. The standoff stretches for a long moment. Your group is larger, but more lightly armed. The intruders have the advantage of firearms and the confidence of those accustomed to taking what they want. We can share the space, Eva suggests cautiously. There's room enough. We have skills that could benefit everyone. The tall man laughs, a harsh sound without humor. Share. In this world, lady, I don't know what fantasy you've been living in, but sharing is a luxury for times of plenty. These ain't those times. Then what do you want? You find yourself speaking up, surprising even yourself, if not to share, and not to coexist. You're outnumbered, even with those rifles. You can't watch all of us all the time. The man studies you with new interest. Got a spine. This one. What we want is simple. This is our place. You're leaving now. Take your personal items and go. Anything else? Food, tools, weapons, stays here. It's a death sentence, and everyone knows it. Without food, without tools, in the depths of winter, your group won't last 3 days. The tension in the room is palpable. Ramirez tightens his grip on the iron poker. Webb shifts his weight, ready to move. Even Daniel seems to rouse from his grief-stricken stupor, his eyes focusing for the first time in days. What happens next occurs so quickly that later none of you can agree on the exact sequence of events. Daniel lunges toward the nearest intruder. A gun fires. Ramirez swings the poker. Webb throws something, a cup, a plate, something that distracts the tall man for a crucial second. Eva pulls Sarah to the floor as more shots ring out. When it ends, 2 of the intruders are dead, one from Ramirez's poker, one from his own companion's stray bullet. The tall man is wounded, but still dangerous, his rifle now trained directly at you as you crouch behind the overturned table. Everybody stop. he shouts, voice tight with pain from the gash on his scalp. Next person who moves gets a bullet. The room freezes. The only sounds are harsh breathing and the whimpering of Sarah, who clutches her arm where a bullet has grazed it. Here's what's happening. The man continues, I'm walking out of here. Anyone tries to stop me, I fire. I'll be back with more friends, and you won't like what happens then. No one moves as he backs toward the door, rifle sweeping across the room, finger tight on the trigger. Just before he reaches the threshold, something changes in his expression, a calculation, a decision. He swings the rifle toward Daniel, who stands exposed in the center of the room. 2 shots sound simultaneously. The tall man crumples, a look of surprise on his face. Daniel falls as well, blood blooming across his chest. The silence that follows is absolute. Then Eva rushes to Daniel's side, medical training taking over. Despite months without proper supplies or equipment, you move to help her, tearing strips from your already ragged shirt for bandages. The tall man is dead, a bullet from his own rifle, having caught him in the throat, when Webb, moving with unexpected speed for his age, knocked the barrel upward at the crucial moment. But Daniel's wound is severe. The bullet has entered his chest, possibly puncturing a lung. Eva works frantically, trying to stabilize him with grossly inadequate supplies. His breathing is labored, bubbles of blood forming at his lips with each exhalation. His eyes, clear and focused for the first time since his sister's death, find yours. It's okay, he whispers, the words barely audible. I'm ready. I'll see Maya soon. Despite Eva's best efforts, Daniel dies within the hour. Another grave to dig in frozen ground. Another piece of humanity lost to the brutal calculus of survival. The bodies of the intruders are dragged outside and left for the elements or the animals. No one has the energy or inclination to bury those who came as predators. The encounter leaves your group shaken, but also more grimly determined. The tall man's threat of returning with others may have been a bluff, but you can't take that chance. Watches are doubled, barricades are constructed across doors and windows. The remaining weapons from the intruders are distributed to those with the knowledge to use them. More importantly, the incident forces a recognition. Passivity means death in this new world. Waiting for rescue, for improvement, for someone else to solve your problems is no longer an option. If you are to survive, it must be through action, through innovation, through a relentless battle against the entropy that threatens to claim everything. With renewed focus, your group turns to the critical question of food. The intruder's presence suggests game in the area. They claim to have been hunting. Ramirez and Webb establish a perimeter of snares in the surrounding woods. Mark continues his solitary expeditions, returning most days with something small, a squirrel, a rabbit, occasionally a bird. Sarah's wound heals slowly under Eva's care. The bullet graze was relatively minor, but her body's ability to recover is compromised by months of insufficient nutrition. She remains weak, feverish at times, but alive. The well becomes your next project. Tawing the frozen surface requires hours of work with heated metal, careful not to crack the structure itself. When you finally break through to liquid water below, it feels like a miracle, clear, cold, clean. The simple act of drinking without rationing, of washing faces and hands without counting every drop, lifts spirits noticeably. Winter maintains its grip on the land. The dust storms continue intermittently, coating everything with the fine grit that has become as much a part of your existence as breathing. But between storms, there are days when the sky clears enough to see the sun, to feel its feeble warmth. These days become precious, opportunities to repair the greenhouse, to assess the surrounding landscape, to gather what materials might be useful for the increasingly urgent projects of survival. In the third week at the homestead, Mrs. Cheng makes a discovery in one of the outbuildings previously deemed empty, a root cellar overlooked in your initial search, containing preserved food. Not much. A few jars of home-canned vegetables, some withered but still edible potatoes and onions, but enough to temporarily ease the constant pressure of hunger. The discovery precipitates a more thorough search of the entire property. Every building, every room, every possible storage space is examined meticulously. The results are modest but significant. A cache of seeds hidden in a wall cavity, likely intended for spring planting, fishing equipment in the rafters of the barn, a small collection of medical supplies, painkillers, antibiotics, bandages, sealed in a waterproof container beneath a loose floorboard. Each find represents a slightly improved chance of survival, a small step back from the precipice you've been walking for months. The most significant discovery comes from Webb, who has been studying the greenhouse with the focus of someone who understands its potential importance. Under his direction, you repair the torn plastic coverings, construct a simple passive solar heating system using large containers of water that absorb warmth during the day and release it at night, and prepare the soil with composted material from the surrounding area. The seeds from the hidden cache are planted carefully, each one a precious possibility. Webb estimates it will be weeks before anything is ready to harvest, even the fastest growing greens. But for the first time since the blackout, there is a concrete plan for food production, rather than just scavenging or hunting. February passes with glacial slowness. The cold remains intense, but subtle changes begin to appear. The sun rises slightly earlier, sets slightly later. The worst dust storms become less frequent. The snow, when it falls, melts more quickly in sunlit areas. Your group establishes routines, roles, relationships. The shared trauma of the past months has created bonds stronger than many pre-blackout friendships or even family ties. You know each other's strengths and weaknesses, preferences and aversions, breaking points and reserves of unexpected resilience. The infant's parents, Mark and Sarah, seem to find a fragile peace in work and companionship. Their grief remains, a shadow that falls across their faces in quiet moments, but they begin to engage more with the group, to speak of possibilities rather than just survival. In early March, as winter's grip begins to loosen, a new threat emerges. Webb falls ill with a high fever, chills, and a racking cough. Eva recognizes the symptoms immediately: influenza, potentially deadly in your weakened conditions without proper medical care. The group takes immediate precautions, isolating Webb in a separate room, designating specific caregivers to minimize spread, establishing sanitation protocols despite limited water and supplies. The antibiotics found in the hidden medical cache are useless against a viral infection, but the painkillers help manage Webb's discomfort. For a week his condition worsens. The fever spikes dangerously high. The cough becomes so severe that he struggles to breathe. Eva stays with him almost constantly, using every trick of her medical training to keep him comfortable, to keep his body fighting. The rest of you maintain essential functions, tending the greenhouse plants, checking snares, securing the perimeter. But a pall hangs over the homestead. After all you've survived, losing someone to illness seems particularly cruel, particularly pointless. On the 8th day of his illness, Webb's fever breaks. He's desperately weak, skeletal in his thinness, but his eyes are clear, his breathing easier. Eva allows herself to express cautious optimism. He's not out of danger. she warns the group. His body is severely compromised from months of malnutrition. But if we can get some nutrition into him, keep him warm and resting, he has a chance. The greenhouse provides its first harvest, just in time, tender sprouts of fast-growing greens, radishes no larger than marbles, herbs with flavors so intense after months of bland or non-existent food that they bring tears to your eyes. Webb receives the lion's share of this first bounty, the group unanimously agreeing that his recovery takes priority. As March progresses, the changes in the natural world accelerate. The snow recedes, revealing ground that has been hidden for months. The dust storms become less severe, though the fine particles remain a constant presence in the air, in your lungs, in every crevice of every building. The days lengthen noticeably. The sun carries actual warmth when it breaks through the haze. Webb recovers slowly but steadily. His knowledge of plants and growing becomes increasingly valuable as the greenhouse begins to produce meaningful amounts of food. It's nowhere near enough to support the group fully, but combined with continued hunting and the occasional lucky find of preserved food in abandoned properties within walking distance, it allows for less austere rationing. The improvement in physical conditions brings a corresponding shift in mental state. For the first time since the blackout, conversations occasionally turn to the future, not just the next day or week, but months ahead. Plans are discussed for expanding the greenhouse, for planting outdoor gardens when the ground thaws completely, for building more permanent defenses against both natural threats and human ones. No one speaks of returning to the way things were before. That world is gone, and everyone knows it. But the possibility of creating a new kind of existence, one that incorporates the harsh lessons of the past months, while allowing for more than mere survival, begins to seem achievable. In early April, Ramirez spots it first, a distant column of dark smoke, rising straight up in the unusually still air. It's too large, too sustained to be a campfire, too contained to be a forest fire or burning building. Industrial, he says, studying it through his binoculars. Controlled burning, maybe a power plant, trying to restart operations. The news energizes the group. After nearly 5 months of complete isolation from larger society, the evidence of organized human activity beyond your small circle feels momentous. A scouting mission is organized immediately. Ramirez and Mark volunteer, each carrying a small portion of the group's food supply, weapons for defense, and strict instructions to observe only, to return within 3 days regardless of what they find. The waiting is agonizing. Those remaining at the homestead continue their work, tending plants, checking defenses, maintaining the fragile systems that have developed for water and sanitation. But attention constantly drifts to the horizon, to the column of smoke that remains visible, tantalizing in its implications. On the 3rd day, just as anxiety is reaching its peak, Ramirez and Mark return. Their expressions tell you immediately that the news is complicated, neither the unmitigated positive everyone hoped for, nor a complete disappointment. It's a coal-fired power plant, Ramirez reports to the assembled group, ordered out 15 miles northeast. They're trying to restore at least partial electrical service to the region. Military presence, organized work crews, some kind of command structure. We watched for a full day, Mark adds. They're letting civilians approach. There's a checkpoint. They're registering people. Seems like they're doing some kind of triage medical attention for the worst cases, turning away those they consider threats. Did you make contact? Eva asks. Ramirez shakes his head. Observed only. As agreed, we needed to report back first. Make a group decision. The debate that follows is intense. The power plant represents the first concrete evidence of organized recovery efforts, the first real hope of rejoining some version of larger society. But it also means giving up the autonomy your group has established, submitting to unknown authorities, potentially being separated. We don't know their criteria for acceptance. Mrs. Cheng points out, what if they're only taking people with certain skills, or only those who aren't too sick or weak? Or what if they're conscripting able-bodied people for labor? Mr. Cheng adds, we've seen how desperate things get. Forced work camps wouldn't be surprising. We can't just ignore this. Webb counters, his voice still weak but determined. If they're restoring power, that means they're rebuilding infrastructure. That means organization, resources, medicine. We can't survive indefinitely, as we are. The discussion continues into the night, each person expressing hopes, fears, reservations. By morning, a consensus emerges, another scouting mission, this time with the purpose of making initial contact, gathering more information before committing the entire group to approaching the checkpoint. Eva volunteers to accompany Ramirez. This time, as a nurse, she might be able to assess the medical situation more effectively, to determine whether reportable diseases or conditions are being treated or used as reasons for exclusion. They depart with instructions to be even more cautious than before, to maintain the option of returning to the homestead if anything seems suspicious or dangerous. The remaining group continues preparations, as if you might need to leave quickly, gathering the most essential supplies, deciding what can be carried and what must be left behind. The wait is even more difficult this time. Sarah paces constantly, worrying about Mark alone at the homestead with half the group gone. Webb focuses obsessively on the greenhouse, harvesting everything that's even marginally ready, as if expecting to be separated from this project that has become his primary purpose. 4 days pass with no sign of the scouting party. On the 5th morning, just as you're organizing a search team, they return, all 3 of them. Ramirez, Eva, and a stranger in a military uniform. The soldier identifies himself as Lieutenant Rodriguez, part of a joint military-civilian recovery operation centered on restoring critical infrastructure. His presence at the homestead is both an assessment and an invitation. We're establishing a secure zone around the power plant, he explains to your assembled group, bringing in people who want to be part of the rebuilding. It's not comfortable, not easy, but it's organized. There's medical care, regular food distribution, work for those able to contribute. He doesn't sugarcoat the conditions. The secure zone is crowded, resources still severely limited. Everyone works according to ability. Rules are strict and enforced without exception. But there is electricity, intermittent but real. There is a hospital with actual doctors and some medications. There is a school for the few children who have survived. There is, most importantly, a plan for moving forward, rather than just continuing to exist on the edge of survival. It's your choice, the lieutenant concludes. No one is being forced to relocate, but isolated homesteads like this one. He gestures around at your precarious setup. They're vulnerable to raiders, to weather, to disease. We've seen too many fail. The decision, when it comes, is not unanimous, but is overwhelming. Even those with the strongest reservations recognize that your small group cannot thrive indefinitely on its own. The homestead has been a sanctuary, a place of healing and growth compared to what came before, but it is not a long-term solution. Preparations for departure are methodical, emotional. Webb harvests every edible plant from the greenhouse, preserving seeds from those gone to flower. The tools that have become extensions of your hands over the past months are carefully packed. Personal items, photos saved through all the hardship, journals recording the unrecorded history, small objects that connect to the before times, are distributed among packs. Before leaving, you hold a simple ceremony at the graves of those who didn't survive. Daniel, Maya, the unnamed infant. No one knows the proper words for such an occasion, so each person speaks briefly, honoring the dead, acknowledging debts that can never be repaid. Lieutenant Rodriguez stands at a respectful distance, allowing this private grief its space. The journey to the secure zone takes most of a day, your group moving slowly to a covenanting strength. As you approach, the scale of the operation becomes apparent. The perimeter is marked by watchtowers, fences, armed guards. Beyond this military cordon, you can see rows of tents, temporary structures, and at the center, the massive power plant, with its smokestack, still sending that beacon of organized human effort into the sky. Processing at the checkpoint is efficient but thorough. Each person is registered, photographed, given a brief medical examination. Questions are asked about skills, previous occupations, any specialized knowledge. Your group's story is recorded. The flight from the farmhouse, the winter at the homestead, the greenhouse that kept you alive when nothing else would. Your assigned housing, canvas tents with wooden floors, each accommodating 4 people. Not privacy, not comfort, but shelter. Your issued identification cards explain the rules of the secure zone, given schedules for food distribution and work assignments. The contrast with your previous existence is jarring. The noise after months of near silence, broken only by wind and voices. The crowds after isolation. The constant movement. The sense of purpose that extends beyond mere survival. That first night, lying on a cot in a tent shared with 3 strangers, listening to the hum of generators and distant voices, you feel a complex mixture of emotions. Relief at having reached a place of relative safety. Grief for all that's been lost. Anxiety about this new social order with its rules and hierarchies, but most surprisingly, a fragile, tentative hope. Spring has come, late and grudging, but it has come. The world hasn't ended, though it has changed beyond recognition. You have survived choices you never thought you'd face, losses you never imagined enduring, a winter that seemed endless. You close your eyes, listening to the breathing of strangers who might become friends, or at least allies. Tomorrow will bring work, integration into this new community, the slow process of rebuilding not just physical infrastructure, but human connections. You wouldn't have lasted a day in the Dust Bowl during a month-long blackout on your own, but you didn't have to. You found others. You made difficult choices, sometimes wrong ones, but you maintained something essentially human through it all. Outside, beyond the fences and watchtowers, the dust still swirls across a damaged landscape. The old world isn't coming back, but something new is being built from its ashes, something that carries the hard-won wisdom of those who survived the darkest winter. It will have to be enough.